When things wasn't going my way, I would flunk out, or I would feel some type of way, or I would lose it. So I had to pause myself. I had to get to a point of finding out the role that I play. Because a lot of times what happens in failure is we look at the role that the next person played in us failing. So I always have to sit back and look at the role I played as an individual that got me to this point. And when I see where I have failed, not where everyone else has failed me, but how I have failed myself, and I try to better on that role. So I still make room. I know there's a lot of stuff going forward that I will fail in.
Hello and welcome to Conquer. I am your host, Kimberly, for this interview. This is a video podcast brought to you by D-Shot Media. With me, we have the lovely Donovan Mini. Donovan Mini, everyone, is an ex-drug addict who is now conquering the mountain of success as he has become the co-founder of Men of War, an ex-drug addict clothing brand, as well as the Freedom to Fly recovery home. Hello, Donovan. Thank you so very much for joining me.
Thank you, Kimberly, for having me. It's an honor for me to be here today.
I'm so glad.
By the way, you look beautiful.
Oh my word. Don't make me blush on TV, guys. Okay, I wanted to say that you say that you're going to have a date with your daughter today. How old is your daughter?
She's 7 years old. She's 7 years old.
Okay, 7 years of bundle of joy. Do you think that she remembers you ever being an addict?
I don't think she does. Like, I always share in my stories, like, I was an absent father. So I would go there certain days, I would go there and I would have fights with her mom, and I would beg to see her and stuff, and I would be probably high on those days, or I would be drunk. But she never got opportunity to come out. I think it was twice she came out and she saw me. So she doesn't really have much memory of me being an addict, but she does have a memory of me being absent, not being there as a father.
Yeah.
But as me being an active addict in her life and her constantly seeing me high, she doesn't really have memory of that.
She doesn't. Oh, that's wonderful. So how is your relationship with her at the moment?
At the moment, it's at the best place that it could be. We have a very good relationship. She's challenging me in a lot of areas, like how I grew up. I never had a relationship with my parents the way I have a relationship with her. So certain conversations, and she's a very intimate person. Like, she can hug the whole day, and she takes me out of my comfort zone, and I'm learning a lot from her. But I'm having the best relationship of my life with her, and that's one of the reasons I'm still single. I feel like if someone comes along now, they might take that space.
They might take that time.
Yes.
I remember when my dad was still alive, I also didn't date because I felt like they would take my dad's
Yes.
time. Because my dad was also not with my mom. So it was a thing of like we had planned dates. Like my dad would come over and I would have to like literally plan my day and be like, my pa kom 5 uur,
Yes.
show me next, you know. So I definitely think stay single, like enjoy your daughter,
Yes.
because she is gonna grow up and distance herself from you, like maybe at a teenage phase.
It's gonna
and
happen.
then get back to you. So maybe then try dating or
Yes.
something. Oh no, guys, you know he's single, he's ready to mingle if you're willing to have like a daughter in your life as well. Tell me some of the sacrifices you make in order to be successful.
There's a lot. Like our lonely nights, me personally, I make a lot of sacrifices, like away from my daughter. There's a lot of lonely nights. There's a lot of nights that I have to study, as I'm ordained minister of the gospel as well. So we go around and we preach, as well as we try and encourage addicts, and we do recovery as well as spreading the message that Jesus still saves. So for me to preach, and also I'm studying theology. So I'm in distance learning, so I have to sacrifice, I have to travel, I have to study, I have to make sure that I still run extra clothing label, that the organization Men of War still goes forward, that we're still helping addicts. They cannot afford to pay for private rehabs, that they can still go to government rehabs. We have to make sure that we have about 60 addicts in our private rehab, which is Freedom to Fly Recovery Center, and we also have to make sure that their need is also met, and we don't use a blanket approach for them. We use an individual approach for each and every person for what need they are there, because we found out that everyone doesn't get addicted for the same reason. So the sacrifices that we make is a lot.
Is a lot.
It is.
Yeah, I can hear from what you're saying. Like you sacrifice family time, you sacrifice your
Yes.
own time to help them, to better them. You say that you use like a personal approach. So also you mentioned something earlier when we were speaking about, does mental health cause addiction, or does addiction cause mental health? So when you work with these people one on one, you really get to like the core of their problem. Is most of your cases mental health, like where mental health like led them to addiction?
Most of the cases, yes, because addiction is a mental disease.
Yeah.
Right? Like any other person that has cancer, that has HIV, addiction is a disease as well. But what we must understand about the disease is, if it's a disease, then what I'm doing when this disease is taking a hold of me, then I'm not entirely responsible for what I do.
Yeah.
So we have to get the addict to own up to what he did when he was an addict, but also to know that there's a part that he might not be entirely responsible for, because his addiction took over at that moment. But we find out that most of the times that it is actually mental health that is causing addiction. It's a lack of processing. It's a lack of going through situations or facing life on life's terms. Most of the addicts, like for me myself, when my dad passed away, I resorted to drugs because I didn't know how to deal with the loss of my father. I wasn't equipped to speak out. I was raised from a family that says men don't cry. We don't speak out on how we feel. I don't show weakness in certain circumstances. And because I had no place to vent my emotion of losing my dad, I ended up resorting to a substance, thinking that this substance will entirely take this thing away from me. So I think mental health is causing drug addiction, because mental health has gotten to a place that if we cannot process things correctly, if we cannot go through thinking patterns in a healthy way without consuming some sort of substance, then there is something wrong with our mind, and we can reach that generation way before they start picking up a drug or a drink.
Yeah. So basically, like I resonate with what you say, because when my dad died, it took a toll on me, and it still does. And you know, the main thing my mother always says to me is, Kimberly, I in a donker plek gaan, but do you know what it takes to get to that place where you like, God, you know, because half of the time I am like, I don't know what to say to God. Like at this point I'm like, God, why am I going through this, right? So most times I'll just be like, God, help me. And so the beginning of the interview also you prayed. So is this something that you guys like teach these people as well? Like just pray about it, you know, God is the first person to go to. Because a lot of times, like I do know that people use like medication and stuff, like calming medication or sleeping tablets and stuff, and that is also like a form of addiction, because then they become addicted to sleeping medication and it becomes like a gateway and stuff like that.
Yes.
So your organization is like big on Christianity and God and like, you know, praying and stuff. Tell us a little bit more about your journey as studying theology and all of that, and how you actually use it in the house.
Okay, for us, we believe in prayer. We got free through prayer. Where the foundation or where the organization is right now and what we have accomplished, if it wasn't for prayer, we wouldn't have accomplished it. But we also try to stay realistic, right? We don't want to paint a picture that we don't get to hard days, that we don't get through moments where it's tough or difficult. Like I can sit on this interview and tell you pray. There are moments where I go through things and I might not, at that moment, I'm not thinking of praying at that moment. And I'm resolving the issue, or I'm going through my emotion, or I have my off day. But I always resort, at the end of it, I have to resort to prayer. And we have to be realistic when we approach these guys as addicts. Some of them might have never prayed before. Some of them do have a biblical background or some church background or religious background, and they might have prayed. And some of them have prayed in their addiction. Like there were days in my addiction where I prayed, and there were days in my addiction that I didn't pray. So now when I come into recovery, it still happens the same. That sometimes you get busy, sometimes you get through stuff and you're trying to shift things and you're not praying at that moment. So we teach them that just because you miss out on prayer, because you don't always pray, doesn't make you less of a Christian. And sometimes we give a poise out to people that we are holier than thou, that we pray like every single day, and when that thing goes off that you have to pray. Yes, you pray every single day before you go to bed, but you have to let them know that where you are in your life and what I have achieved in my recovery, it happened through these certain steps. And there were days that I missed prayer. But if I tell them that they should not miss prayer, then I'm telling them that they cannot achieve what I have if they miss prayer. But I have achieved it while I missed prayer. So we try to be more realistic, that they can see that we are reachable. So when we teach them and we try to bring them up to a level of recovery where they can also chase the dreams the way we are doing, we have to make sure that we are teaching them that there are days that's going to be hard, there are days that's going to be off, and you are going to fail. We don't give them a poise that does not really exist. So we try to be more realistic in giving them that approach. And we want them to get saved. We always say that the addict can be clean and still go to hell. So we're not trying to get the addict clean, but we're trying to secure an eternity for the addict as well. Exactly. So once the addict gets clean, he has to encounter our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ also. We push for that, and we want them to study and know the word, because that's the basis of our addiction. Like any program can get you clean. You can get into any boot camp and whatsoever, and they can get you clean. But it's only God that sustains us and keeps us clean.
Yeah, repentance.
Yes.
Okay, so I like your approach because, like I said, my mom is always like Kimberly, but to me it's a thing of like, sometimes there needs to be another way out.
Yeah.
You know, like sometimes there needs to be, like, you need to be able to just call someone and be like, I'm not okay.
Yes.
And now people preach this thing that jy kan nie op mense staat maak, die Here is die enigste mens, you know. And sometimes you need to hear a human voice. You need to hear what God wants to say to you from a human person. And I feel like a lot of people miss that like, yes, ek gaan na die Here toe. I did pray. But now it's time for the Lord to speak to me. And He doesn't always just speak to me when I read my Bible.
Yes.
He speaks to me when I have encounters with people.
Yes.
He speaks to me when a random drug addict says, like, he's recovered, and he says to you, the gala I can for you, we play together, and you're just like, God, you are good. You know, He speaks to you in different ways. And a lot of people are always just like, praat me nie, Here. But sometimes I want to speak to Donovan, because Donovan is going to, you know, help me out of this and stuff like that. So I really do like your approach. Like, damn.
We have to approach like that, because people don't understand that you can be saved and still be depressed, right? We got a lot of people, like, let me make an example of what happened in South Africa this year, where one of our artists killed himself, Ricky, right? And you find out that he has a success, right? He has accomplished a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of people looking up to him, and a person like that takes his own life, is because we don't make enough space for people to be human, for people to vent, you understand? So as much as we are achieving stuff, we should not lose our humanistic side of who we are, of being able to vent. As much as people can pray, sometimes people just need to really, like you said, pick up the phone and be like, ek is fine. I'm not doing fine at all. And I would lie to you if I tell you that it never crossed my mind to actually pick up a drug or a drink again. It does cross my mind. And if I'm going to keep on saying that this thing doesn't cross my mind, then it becomes a danger, because the enemy dwells in stuff that you keep secret. Like if you're doing something in the secret, he will always hold that thing against you. So if I keep my secret of that thought crossing my mind, he will always hold that secret against me. So the addict must know as well that even after he's a few years clean, it can be 5 years clean, the thought still comes, the taste still comes. I woke up, I think it was 5 months ago, I woke up and I craved, and I was smelling crystal meth in the room, and there was no crystal meth, but I was just smelling the smell of crystal meth. And if we tell people that those days do occur, we can then train them for those days that will come. But if we keep saying pray, no, sometimes we don't need to pray. We just need to speak and say, I'm not fine, I'm going through a lot. Cry and speak your heart out. And then after that, you feel better. I think it's therapy as well.
Yeah, crying is therapeutic.
Yes.
I suggest crying. I wanted to say, so basically that's another sacrifice that you make daily. Like, you sacrifice your body, your like, the temptation of the flesh, how you say you wake up and you would like to go
Yes.
and smoke. Do you smoke, Kristen?
I did.
Okay.
Way before.
No, I'm saying like, do you smoke it or do you like
Yes,
this
yes.
injection? I'm not.
There is
familiar with
heroin,
how
which is
you
called
use it.
nyaupe, but
Oh,
I
okay.
wasn't on that.
So you smoke crystal. So
Crystal.
yeah, there are days when you want to smoke and that's the flesh's sensation and you sacrifice that because you know there's somewhere you want to be.
Yes.
There's a purpose you want to fulfill. There's success you want to reach.
Yes. And we have to make a lot more sacrifices as a team, right? Like we have to equip ourselves for certain things like the law of our country. It is so against us helping people, and not only us helping addicts, but anyone else helping somebody. Like for instance, if you had to start a crash right now, right? Start up your crash and then they would probably come close and ask for certain paperwork and all of that, right? But there's no one asking for paperwork for anyone that starts like a club or something, you understand? Or that starts out something else. But whenever you're doing something to help people, the government has a way of approaching and want to make sure that your paperwork is fine. And that's the sacrifice that we always have to do, to sit down, regroup, and look at ways and means to help and still find the system to not actually work in a way that we are breaking the law while still trying to help the addict, because sometimes you can go as far as breaking the law, but you're just trying to help the addict, because as much as an addict, he still has rights. There's still certain things that this government gives him the choice or the benefit to make his own decisions or whatsoever. So we have to always look at that as well and constantly sit as a team. And sometimes we have our arguments together, we have our days off, we have our disagreements, and we have to come back. Like where we are right now, it took a lot of crying nights, a lot of unhappy days, a lot of days we slept and went to bed and we weren't fine with one another. But by the grace of God, we have always managed to get back together and find the core purpose of why Men of War started.
Yeah, that says to me, you sacrificing yourself. En een keer kan sê altijd die eie ek.
Ja.
Like you sacrificing what you, the quality jy het in order for the movement.
Yes, it has to die. Like for our community, there was a journey that we took that you probably stole something or you did something in your addiction to someone in Eden Park, and then we get a call that we have to go and help by that house and he praat sy kinders met die hand, and that alone is a sacrifice for you to go there and humble yourself. And in that same sense, you somehow use it to ask forgiveness and say, you know what, I'm sorry for what I did a couple of years ago, but we're coming out to help your child. So it's also a sacrifice for us to work with people that we have once neglected, people that we have done wrong, people that we have stolen from, and people that we have hurt. Yeah. So it's a way of us also making amends to the community.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another thing I want to cover before we end is that I was thinking, on days when you have like your temptation and stuff, what helps is that at that moment you don't have easy access to it. Because I know for me now, many times I was like, you know, I think I'm gonna weed work because I just need to be high at this point. But then it's like,
yeah.
I don't even know, like I have no knowledge of this. Or I'm like, I have no drink. But then I'm like, it's 6 at night. I can't know a bottle of wine or something like that. You know, or maybe sometimes I'm like, I don't have money. So I think another thing that our community should strive to work towards is limiting the access of the substances. Because when you have those days, it will be like, yo, no breaking us to the because it's not just your next door. Seen it, piti slappy, as to a piti slap mama, you know, it's not that type of thing. So yeah, I just wanted to tell you that.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Another question I'd like to know for myself personally and for the community, how do you handle failure?
There's a thing in recovery that we say that you gotta always keep the door. You don't close the door, you keep it a little bit open so that you can always look back where you come from. So I always say that because I come from a background of sports, I was never taught on how to lose and everything. So when I lost my dad, I went astray. So even in my recovery, it became a problem that when things wasn't going my way, I would flunk out, or I would feel some type of way, or I would lose it. So I had to pause myself. I had to get to a point of finding out the role that I played. Because a lot of times what happens in failure is we look at the role that the next person played in us failing. So I always have to sit back and look at the role I played as an individual that got me to this point. And when I see where I have failed, not where everyone else has failed me, but how I have failed myself, and I try to better on that role. So I still make room. I know there's a lot of stuff going forward that I will fail in, but it's not going to stop me from trying. So that's how I handle failure. I always look at my role that I play and try to own up to my responsibility and do better the next time, rather than looking at who else played a role or who else made it impossible for me or who else benefited or who else contributed to me failing. So I rather look at the role I play, and when opportunity comes again, I try to do better.
And that's actually like it makes sense now, because you only have yourself, like you are only accountable for yourself. You can't change other people's actions. What they do to you, you have no control over. How you react is what you have control over. So by like taking accountability and being like, okay, I also didn't handle the situation proper, is like you being able to grow and move forward.
And it's important because we don't teach, like a lot of people don't teach their children that day would come. Some days I speak to my daughter and she says I'm mean to her when I say that you're gonna fail in certain things, because we have a cliche of raising our children being, yeah, you gaan goed doen, you gaan goed doen. But sometimes we have to let them know that in life you're gonna fail. And I've made peace with that I'm gonna fail in certain things, that I might not always be the best one at something. I might not always be the first one. I might come second. I might be third. But it's not going to stop me from trying. So I handle that. I see failure as just another opportunity to try again.
I also say when it comes to kids, tell them it's okay. Like with my godson, he has this thing where he wants to do everything right and he fails. And then I tell him, it's okay. Like, it's no biggie. Like, we can fix it, you know. Maybe you should have asked for help. I'm here now. I'm an adult. I'm going to help you. And that's something I feel very few of us grew up with. Like, a lot of our parents weren't that blunt with us to say, you can afford money. And when you do, it's okay to ask for help. Thank you so very much, Donovan. That is the end of our videos, ladies and gentlemen. Please tune in next time. Goodbye.
It's not an interview as a formal interview. Because when I understand what you're trying to get to, because even with us at Men of War, sometimes we have moments where we disagree as leadership. We have moments where we cry, we fight, and we feel like, are we moving the right direction? It gets heavy for some of us. And we are addicts trying to help addicts and still have to maintain our own sobriety.
That's true. Like I saw on Facebook, you guys went to sleep with the addicts. I was like, that is tempting. That is.
It is
like,
too much.
It's challenging. I was like, damn.
So sometimes it takes from us.
Definitely. Come on, Donovan.
Sim, lá nós não vamos recordar, só tem que jogar e tipo, a racial escapar. Tu vas estar ali para a So,